Hello everyone, this is the Climate Voices podcast and I'm your host Omesa Mokaya. So welcome to our very first episode of the podcast where we'll be talking about climate change. We'll be giving an interface for interaction between people who have been working from different capacities, ranging from researchers to policy practitioners and people who have been working in the communities in addressing the impacts of climate change. So today I'm joined on the show by an amazing guest who's been doing a lot of work, especially with communities in addressing climate change. Caroline Kibii, welcome.
Thank you very much.
So Caroline is an environmental scientist, a researcher, a writer, a consultant, a community volunteer, and a nature enthusiast who's been building capacities for communities in ecological restoration and protection. So welcome Caroline, and feel free to tell us more about what you're doing at the moment and what you've been doing in the past around empowering the communities in addressing climate change.
Thank you so much, Omesa, for inviting me to this podcast. I'm excited to be here. I'll just go straight to share about my experiences and exactly what I do at the moment. So I am a founder of an organization called Enviro Initiative, which has been active since 2019, and we build on 4 pillars, that is climate action, sensitization and storytelling, and documentation and conservation. So we work across Kenya, but we are trying to open our borders to working with other individuals and communities across Africa. So currently I am coordinating in collaboration with an organization called Climate Change Lawyers Cafe, an environmental and climate action mentorship program that targets youth between the ages of 21 and 29 from East Africa. So we have youth from 5 countries at the moment: Ethiopia, we have Somalia, we have Rwanda, one from Rwanda, we have Uganda, Tanzania, and Kenya. Actually, those are 6 countries. So what we are trying to do is we are trying to build the capacity of these young people who have demonstrated an interest in environmental conservation and climate action, so that they can be more informed when it comes to tackling climate issues. Our main foundation is that so many people have an interest in climate issues. They want to champion, but they don't have the core aspects of climate change, or rather climate science. So for instance, this month, let me say August, September, which is like a month, we are running a program on climate science. So we have different experts that come in to educate the mentees to understand, the critical aspects of climate science. What is climate science? What is climate change? What really informs climate change, until the point where we say we want to develop climate adaptation and mitigation interventions. And that is where the youth come into play, because they want to go out and solve the climate problems that we are facing right now, especially here in Africa. So I think that's what we are doing, and we've gone ahead to sort of try and pair the mentees and mentors. So we have different topics and people that come from different fields around climate change and environment. So I think that is what I'm doing right now. But in the past, and Enviro World, we've worked on restoring a lake in Baringo. It's called Lake Kamnarok, that has been drying frequently. But this is a lake that is a main source of livelihood to the community. It's like the source of water to wildlife. We are talking about more than 500 elephants that used to go and quench their thirst from that lake. But because of climate change, things have changed. The lake has been drying. We are talking about a community that has been fishing, that draws the water from there, a community that keeps livestock, and they've been taking their livestock to drink water from the lake. But now they cannot do that because the lake is drying. So I think entry point was to sit down with the community and have a discussion, keeping in mind that this is a community that understands the problem. It's the community that has the solutions. It's only that they may not have that capacity to sort of execute those solutions. That is why we came into play to, first of all, understand what is the approach that this community wants to take when it comes to solving the problem within their community, restoring the lake. And by restoring this lake, it doesn't mean that they'll just go and plant trees. No, they have to start from upstream and downstream, combined effort. And we didn't go there as Enviro World Initiative only. We partnered with other organizations such as KIN, which is a youth-led climate network. And then we also approached the other community actors within Lake Kamnarok. We also talked to the county government, and at this point our liaisons person was a county representative. So for us it was a combined effort, and it's something that we are still following it up. So what we've done already is to go and distribute seed balls, because we thought that was the easiest way to sort of restore the lake or the ecosystem around the lake, in as much as we still have other plants. But you see, working with the community really takes a lot of courage and effort. You don't just go in and say, this is what I want you to do. And we are tackling a climate issue. We're also tackling an issue that involves land rights. So it's very complicated, but with that joint effort, I think we are heading towards the right direction. And I don't know, what else should I talk about?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of work that you've been doing. I like how you've approached the approach that you've given it, involving everyone, bringing everyone on board, from the communities, from the government, and also reaching out to other, especially young youth-led organizations, because what we have been trying to do is to address the siloed approach that most conservationists have been doing. Everyone is doing their work without consulting the other person, but we are all doing the same work. So we end up, replicating all the efforts. So it's a good approach to, reach out to people, and also trying to co-create solutions, because these are communities who are affected by, like you mentioned, the Lake Kamnarok, which provides a source of livelihoods to a lot of communities, and also this wildlife you mentioned, around 500 elephants have to quench their thirst and all that.
Actually, let me just add that ever since the lake started drying, most of those elephants, they've migrated. The giraffes that we used to have, they've moved to other parks. So you can clearly see that climate change is taking a toll on the community and wildlife. And it's something that if not acted upon collectively, then it's going to impact on biodiversity and then humanity also.
And that's something that we don't want to see. So the reason why we have to keep working together. So in the beginning you mentioned something about breaking down the climate science information. That's a major problem that we are seeing at the moment. Climate science is a very complicated terminologies that people don't especially understand at the communities. And you mentioned bringing people on board to break down the climate science information such that people can be able to understand and be willing to take part. So I remember like having the informal conversation with you, and I've also been following up on what you're doing on social media and all. You are a good writer. You've been doing a lot of writing as a way of communicating what you do. So can you briefly talk about your writing initiatives and how you use it to communicate your work?
Thank you. Yes, I think I've been writing for several years now. I started writing blog posts, writing letters to the editor, just around climate change, environmental conservation. And for me, I take writing as a very important tool to communicate, especially voice those ideas, ideologies, and propositions that I may not have another platform to communicate them. If I don't have the media, sort of, let's say the mainstream media, to voice my concerns, I can write them, I can publish them on my blog, I can publish in the media. So I've been writing, or rather I've been contributing to different local newspapers as well as international platforms. To just voice my concerns around climate issues and environmental conservation. So it's been a very good platform for me, because it has opened doors, not just academically, but also given me an opportunity to work here in Kenya as well as abroad. I've had a chance to be a policy leader fellow, and I think the basis of selection was as a result of the advocacy articles that I was publishing in the media. So I write articles from different angles, opinionated articles, advocacy articles, but I've gone ahead to writing policy briefs, publishing journals and research papers. So the foundation was blogging, which I think it has really given me an edge and also strengthened my voice and my understanding of climate change, climate issues, and environmental concerns. And you might want to know that this is an area that not many people have ventured in. There's still few people who are into writing, or let me say communicating climate issues from an informed point of view. And I think we need more people who go into this space. It does not mean that you need to be an environmentalist for you to communicate climate issues, but you can, educate yourself. And I think that is why we have this environmental and climate action mentorship, because we want to empower more people to be able to communicate these issues from an informed point of view.
I like, communicating climate change. It's a good initiative that everyone should take part in, especially the young people. So I see this presenting a lot of opportunities for young people, especially some of us who've been, studying about climate change and climate science. So trying to get everyone, understanding what you're talking about and how to address it. Yeah, I mean, through your initiative, the Enviro World, you've done a lot about that. I mean, you're empowering so many people to take up that, and I'm hoping writing is one of the skills they are going to pick. Yeah, and also there are various other ways of communicating climate change by going to the mainstream media, going to radio stations, especially, for example, when you're working in Baringo. As a person who understands the local language, it would be very interesting to have young people talk about climate change, for example, in Kalenjin, in Kibii. I mean, for people to understand and know what we're talking about.
Exactly, that's true.
I've said through your work and also the writing and communicating, it has opened not just opportunities here in Kenya, but abroad. You've been in Europe. You have done so many other things apart from doing recommendations for policy through policy briefs and giving your opinionated contributions on climate change. So given that you're also trying to speak to the young people, get them attracted to taking part in these initiatives, you have taken part in a fellowship policy leader through your work. So maybe there's someone who is listening out there who doesn't know that maybe they can get a career out of doing this kind of work. So can you briefly talk about how your work has led you to taking part in this kind of fellowships, and maybe try to empower some young person who might be listening?
Thank you so much. I think that is a very dynamic question, because it's not just it's not something that is straightforward. You really need to do quite a lot, and you need to believe in yourself. You need to do a good job, not just doing it because you want to get something out of it, but you want to make a difference in the community. And for me, going into climate action or conserving the environment partly came because I was trained, or I'm a trained environmentalist, and secondly, I've been impacted by climate issues because I come from...
You come from Baringo,
I come from Baringo, yes. Oh, okay. And that is a marginalized community.
And I think according to the agroecological zonation, is it classified under the arid and semi-arid
Exactly,
land?
yes. Partly, there are places that are completely arid, the others that are semi-arid, others are highlands, so it's a mixed agroecological zone. Yes. So I've faced climate issues firsthand, and so for me doing this is because I want to address an issue that has affected me, is affecting my community. And what I would just tell the young people who are going into this space is that do it with passion. but inform yourself, because you cannot solve environmental problems if you are not well informed. And people need to understand that environmental issues are different in different regions, so any solution that you are developing has to be very specific to that area, and to that problem. So we need to educate ourselves every now and then to understand the dynamics affecting that community. What problem do you really want to solve, and in the long run, those actions that you're getting yourself into are the ones that are going to open doors. So for me, I think it has taken the training as an environmental scientist. It took the passion going into writing, and then also passion that I volunteered to be a community leader.
Yeah, and also partly coming from a community that is affected by the impacts of climate change, right?
Yes, exactly. In as much as that has not played a lot of it has not added much value, but I would say just have that passion, do it willingly without expecting anything, and be informed.
Wow.
But also, opportunities do not come looking for you every time. You have to look for those opportunities, run for them. If you see something that you feel like it's within your scope, it's something that you really know and believe that you can tackle, you qualify, why not try? I think it will take you to greater heights. But if you do a good job, again, opportunities will come looking for you. Sooner or later, you'll find that organizations, individuals are coming for you for consultancies. And as an environmentalist, maybe not environmental scientist, but environmentalist, you have so many opportunities. You can be an activist, you can be a champion for environmental conservation. But if you want to go deeper into the science, then take a course or go to school. There are so many free courses on environmental issues, climate change, that you can enroll. They are free, and you become a better person when it comes to addressing these issues. You've
said this fellowship has so many opportunities for you. So I'm assuming you met, other young people from different parts of the world. So how did you get to learn how they're addressing maybe climate change from their perspective in their countries? And what did you learn from the fellowship that you're applying at the moment?
So the Policy Leader Fellowship was very integral in my career, because I got to meet people from different parts of the world. This was an international fellowship. I had people from India that we got to work together.
Where was the fellowship?
The fellowship was in Florence, Italy. So this is a fellowship that is categorized into two. There's a 5-month fellowship and 10-month fellowship. So you can see that you can do quite a lot, depending on how aggressive you are and what you really want to achieve. And of course, it opens doors to so many opportunities. So like I was trying to say, that I had an opportunity to work with youth from different parts of this world. And one of the things that I gained from this fellowship is networking. And I think what I'm actually applying right now is I'm using the networks that I gained during the fellowship to apply in our mentorship program, because part of the trainees or fellows in that fellowship. So I think that is something that comes without saying, that if you go to any place, you really need to make connections. And in the climate space, where yes, the challenges could be the same, but how you approach them is quite different. For me, I got to learn that a problem that is affecting me in Kenya, in as much as it's the same thing, it could be floods, but the way we tackle that problem in Kenya is totally different from the way it's tackled in India, for instance, or in Manila, Philippines. So I just realized that climate issues are very context specific, and we need to really focus on that. Even when we're working with our communities, whether we're working under the government, under non-governmental organization, or you're working as an individual, you just need to understand that you cannot solve climate issues from an umbrella point of view. It has to be very, very specific, and context specific. So I think those are some of the things that I picked from that fellowship. Of course, there are so many things because it was a policy fellowship. Again, we are looking at transnational policies. For me, I was focusing on single-use plastics. I was trying to sort of look at the possibility of having continental policy.
Treating?
Not really a treaty, but I was looking at Africa as a continent. Can we have a single policy that binds us to address single-use plastics? So that was my main project. But of course, I would just report that yes, it's possible. We can have, but it will take a lot of effort. Needs a lot of
political
sort of a very strong political goodwill. Because we come from Africa. We are more than 50 countries with totally different policies. We are at different economic and social levels. So trying to have a common policy that is binding can be very hard. But of course, we are trying to also have the free trade in Africa. So for you to have that free trade, again, you need to have a common policy that is binding you. And I thought the single-use plastic policy that binds Africa as a continent could be of interest. So I wrote a policy brief, which maybe you will share with your followers. I'll give you a link.
I'll share the link,
So I think that's it for the fellowship.
It speaks a lot to the kind of opportunities we have out there and how the young people can take part in. I remember you also recently attended the Stockholm Plus 50, the Science and Policy Forum. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes. So I had an opportunity to participate in the Stockholm 50 Plus, but specifically I took part in the Science Policy Business Forum, which was preceding the Stockholm 50 Plus, which was a general forum. So this policy science business forum was a very important opportunity, which was, I would say it was a restricted forum in a way. But it gave me...
So what do you mean restricted? Is like for governments or...
No, it was an high level policy forum.
Political forum.
Not political, but policy.
Policy,
Yes, high-level policy. So, of course, it brought people from high-level organizations, government entities. Yes. But the point was trying to sort of see the linkage between science, policy, and business, sort of harmonize them, because you cannot have a sustainable business or carry out business in a sustainable way without being informed by science. And also you need a policy, and policies are developed by the governments, let me say so. So the forum focused on that, how we can harmonize. And I think one of the recommendations from some of the participants was that we need to harmonize science, policy, and business, sort of have an interconnecting
you've mentioned so much that you've done around the plastics. Of course, that's a major issue, and I like the position Kenya is taking. Kenya, we have a total ban on single-use plastics. That's something that the rest of the Africa and the planet should emulate, especially through a policy, perspective. At some point, the US was trying to force through the American Chemistry Council to impose, importation of plastics into Kenya. But I like the stand that the young people took, in standing in solidarity. You said some of the things the young people can do, it's about activism and all that, demonstrating against government. We put our position very clear that we don't want that, because we're already taking, one step forward and we don't want to go 2 steps back. America was trying to get us back, but the young people stood firm in collaboration with others, and we said no to single-use plastics, and Kenya remains a leader in that space. So what we actually want to see is, even in climate change response, we want Kenya to remain a leader that it is. I know the president also attended the Stockholm Plus 50, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, it is.
And he always gives, very strong statements or policy positions. That's one thing I admire our leadership for, because we have all these policies, and given that you have been working in the policy space. Also through your work, I know you have not just been recognized locally, but I remember I saw that you were recently, voted. Were you voted or nominated as I don't know, top 100 young African conservation leaders in 2021? Wow, what an achievement! So what does it feel like, to be in that space, and how did you react to that? How are you using that title, to inform your work at the moment? What did you feel like being,
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, for me it felt really amazing to be recognized as one of the 100 top young African conservationists. Not just because I work with communities, but also from a leadership front, working with young people. Besides working with the youth, I've also worked with young children, primary school kids, planting trees in churches, giving them fruit trees, to plant in their homes, because I think that is one way of just bestowing sort of environmental responsibility among the young people. So this recognition, or let me say nomination, came at a time when I was actively involved in conservation issues, and I'm still actively involved, and I think it gave me a platform to really voice my concerns and come strongly as someone who has been recognized. I think it gave me a power to do more, because I felt like, okay, someone has seen my efforts, and to be recognized at such a level meant a lot to me. I think that is part of the inspiration to mentor other young people. And for me, I thought, okay, I was recognized, I was trained, because this was not just a mere recognition, but it was a 9-month training that we were exposed to different people from across the globe who educated us on different aspects, from communicating environmental issues, from seeking for grants, networking, and that is what I'm sort of trying to do with the young people through the mentorship program. So I'm using it in different ways, and I hope more and more people will come out and work hard in conserving our environment. You don't have to be recognized to be an environmentalist or to take climate action or environmental action. I think your work will always speak volumes, and people will actually see what you do, so you don't have to work hard for you to be recognized. Just do what you have to do, and you will be recognized in the end. And I must say that there are many people in Kenya, especially the young people, who are doing amazing works. Their efforts have not been recognized, but I would say don't give up.
It's not every person who gets to be recognized as a top 100 leading climate and conservation leaders in Africa. So I know there are a lot of people, especially those working in communities, who are doing some really amazing work, which is more impactful, but it's not covered maybe in the mainstream media. There's not that kind of recognition to encourage other young people, to not just young people, other people are, interested or passionate in taking part in climate change conservation and, addressing climate change. In the same spirit, in the global processes, Africa is known to be lagging behind, especially, in the IPCC processes. We are heading to the 27th Conference of Parties in Egypt in November later this year. I know, so many stories have been told, especially around loss and damage for Africa, but we rarely see African, voices being represented in that. Can you link up that to, kind of apathy in the African science space? You say that we are not taking part, aggressively or proactively to make sure our voices are heard, or why do you think, African voices are not being heard? Yet there's all this amazing work that is being done.
Thank you for that question. Well, we know that many people have gone into the climate science policy space, but I would say that we've not given research a lot of emphasis in most African countries. In cases where there is research, it looks like we don't really publish our work for the whole world to see. perhaps we lack platforms to publish these articles or the results of our research. And in cases where there are platforms, those platforms are not free. In most cases,
So
you
you
find
have
that
to pay for
people
them.
have to pay to publish their work. Yet this is work that could go into informing, other people's
The
work.
global processes, for instance.
So I think for many people who don't have the funds to pay for publications, then it becomes a problem. So people do the research, they write their results, but they don't get a chance to publish them in the global open spaces. I think that is one. And two, perhaps we still lack strong support from our governments, because we really need to see the governments supporting researchers, supporting climate activists.
In terms of resources, like we mean financial.
I mean financial, because environmental conservation is not cheap. It's very expensive, and for people who really want to do a lot of work, they need that financial support. It may not be financial support, it could even be machinery. You need some equipment to do certain works.
Testing,
exactly. You want to restore a lake, for instance. You want to sort of test, let's say, the water quality,
stability,
exactly, all those. You want to go and say you want to do massive planting or maybe spreading of seed balls. You might want to use drones, or you want to use something else. That is something that a young person may not do it by themselves. They'll need some support. And given that we are doing it for the benefit of our country, our community, so we need that support. And the strongest support should come from the people and the government, in as much as there are research and non-governmental organizations that have come to support us. So I think there are so many things that go into the fact that most African scientists, or maybe information is not available, and also data. We don't have a common area that you can access that data. And I think this is something that should go to the governments, that they need to establish a platform where we can access all the data. If it means decadal data, you want to do sort of decadal analysis in terms of climate variability, you need to have a platform where you can just go and generate that data and do your analysis. But that is what is lacking. So there are so many things that go into play.
I know, for example, I think Kenya has the Kenya Climate Change Knowledge Portal, but maybe now the kind of data that we have there is what you're talking about, right?
Because we need to have quality data, recent, something that is current, because if we have outdated data now, it will become very hard for us to inform research and make those conclusions. And
I think again this it's something that presents opportunities. Everything that we're doing or talking about, what I'm always trying to look at is the opportunity for young people.
Exactly.
So especially the young people who are into climate change science and climate change conservation, this presents so many opportunities for young people to take part in that, especially they can be data scientists or researchers, or doing modeling and stuff. I know we were talking about modeling some time back. It's like these are new opportunities, or like emerging opportunities that young people can take, can grasp and take part in. And the idea of getting support from the governments, especially around making sure that all this work that we're doing is getting out, our research is getting out. That's the only way I think of Kenya and Africa is going to communicate their position and their work to the rest of the world, so that all these efforts are captured, especially in the global arena, through, for example, the IPCC, which publishes. That's the only way Africa is going to tell their stories. As we come to an end, I mentioned that we are going for the COP, 27th COP, which is happening in Egypt. Many people have called it an African COP, which I'm not sure what that means. Is it because it's happening in Africa? But who is leading the process, and how are we going to make sure that our voices are captured in this, and we are actually going to get good results from this conference, from these negotiations? So for the young people who are preparing, for instance, to go to the COP, which message will you have for them, and what do you think this conference of parties is going to achieve? Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think there have been so many critics around COPs, but for me, I would say, well, it is an opportunity for us as young people and the African continent to voice their grievances around just climate actions. And I think the young people who are preparing to participate in the upcoming COP should go there with a very strong message that we need to have just climate action, that each country, each individual needs to take responsibility of their actions. We already know that the countries that contribute more of the greenhouse gases are not really taking the responsibility of paying for the damage. So I think we need to go as a young people to COP and emphasize that we want organizations and individuals who contribute high proportions of carbon to take responsibility. They need to contribute more of the climate finance.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And of course, you know that that is our major problem in Africa.
It's
climate
funding,
finance, the funding.
Mm.
And that is what we really want. We need the lion's share because we're the ones suffering it. We contribute the smallest amount of greenhouse gases. Yeah, so for me, I would tell the youth, you need to be stronger. You need to go there with a common voice and know that you may not always get what you want. You may not always be heard, but at least speak your mind.
Mm.
But also know that back at home, the same challenges are still waiting for you and your community to tackle. So learn something from COP and come and apply at home in a very contextualized manner.
Yeah, I take that as a special calling to the young people, strong voice that you're setting out there for young people to take part in. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it doesn't just go to the young people. I think even the African governments, it's high time that they stood as as one voice, because all these issues are common issues that we're facing. And I also like contextualized form of addressing issues. I know climate change is a global issue, but different people affected differently. Yeah, so for example, the issues around climate change that are affecting people in Baringo, like you mentioned, that are quite different from people in Kitui or from Kisii, where I come from. Yeah, so there's that aspect of having local community-led actions, and that's one thing that young people, I keep emphasizing on young people, because it's our future that is endangered, and we keep talking about sustainability. Sustainability is about the future. It's about what we are doing now and how it affects our future. So any young person who's listening to that, this is our space.
Yeah.
Let's seize it. Let's seize the opportunity and make our voices heard.
Yeah. Yep. I think before you close, you mentioned about community-led initiatives. And I think it's about time that scientists and researchers go out and tap on the local knowledge. We call it traditional knowledge. We understand that our communities really have homegrown, traditional skills and knowledge that if it's not tapped, we are going to suffer in future. Yet this is knowledge that has been used over time to predict climate variations. So it needs to be documented, and I think this will inform research. So these are some of the things that you were talking earlier, that how comes we don't see a lot of research coming from Africa. It's because we are not investing in such. Yeah.
I mean, that's a very strong recommendation. It's also not just focus on science and forget that the people who have been, like our forefathers, who have been addressing this kind of climatic and weather changes and climate variability over time. This is a way, for example, they have been doing agriculture, and solving the issues of food insecurity, and they have been feeding generations and generations. Before we even knew about the kind of instrumental data and satellite data that we're using for science-based kind of climate change science. So strong message there. Let's also, take advantage of indigenous knowledge as we work with the communities. Last words for anyone listening to this?
To anyone who is listening, I want to say that you have a responsibility to ensure that your individual carbon footprint does not contribute to the increase in greenhouse gases. That is something we are trying to fight right now. So you have a sole responsibility as a citizen of wherever country, wherever community, to ensure that you check on your consumption and the waste that you generate, to ensure that we really make this planet a better place for us as the current generation and the future generations. We want to have that inter and intergenerational equity. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Intergenerational and intragenerational equity, very important there. We have the young people in mind as we do whatever we're doing. Yeah, so thank you so much, Caroline. It's been amazing having you on the show. It's a lot of good stuff that you've shared. With this kind of information and communicating climate change, we're going to make all our efforts out there be heard, and we try to make the world a better place.
Absolutely, and congratulations for the podcast.
Yeah,
we
thank you
need
so much.
more of these platforms to share our experiences and also give other people an opportunity to learn. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure. Yeah, until next time. So anyone listening to this, I encourage you to be looking out for more of such amazing conversations from different people who have been doing amazing work in addressing the impacts of climate change. So we'll be sharing. I remember you said you are going to share a link to some of the work that you've done and the fellowships and how young people can take part in that. So look out to that, and we'll be sharing more in the days to come. Thank you so much for your time, and have a lovely time, everyone.